We're Ashley and Sabrina,
your co-hosts for Ruckup Buttercup podcast.
Military life can be challenging,
but also has its advantages.
Come and be part of the unfiltered
and sometimes unhinged conversations with fellow military spouses, Kayla and Laura, as we dive into the occasional rant
and rave of military life.
Share the stories that make us who we are,
and showcase the amazing organizations
and resources out there that make our lives a little bit better.
Whether you're new
or a seasoned military family,
we all need a little extra love.
So, Ruckup Buttercup, we got your six.
You can also hear us on Wreath Across America Radio on Women in Media Wednesdays at 11 p.m. See you there.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ruckup Buttercup. We are dwindling down to the end of our 5th season. I think we only have like 2 more podcasts after this for the year. So we're very excited. We do have a guest today. It's just myself. Sabrina is feeling under the weather, so you will just get Ashley and our guest Ashley today. Tell us you weren't a 90s baby without telling me you were a 90s baby based off our 80s, 90s from our name. I think it's so funny. You have to be like at least our 3rd or 4th Ashley that we've like interviewed in the 5 years we've been doing the podcast, just because like it's such a popular name.
It's so true. I always had 5 other Ashleys in every sport or class, so we made sure all our kids had unique names so they would.
Yes, same. I love that. Yeah, same thing. 100%. I like most common name, and I was like, they can have a name that's kind of, not weird or like super unique, but it cannot also be within the first top 100.
That's it.
So today I am with Ashley Ashcroft. She is a fellow military spouse, are you still a teacher? Or are you?
I homeschool our kids. So
okay, homeschool.
Technically, yes.
Technically, yes.
Anymore.
So she is an accredited, recognized national educator. She's a homeschool mom. She is a Down syndrome advocate, which I love, and we can talk about your daughter a little bit more here in a little bit. But yeah, she serves as the military director for her church, teaches Bible studies, and writes for Military Spouse magazine, which is really exciting. You're really busy, but has also written two books. So I'm going to let Ashley tell us a little bit about herself. So why don't you elaborate on what I just said, or give us a little bit more info about you? How long have you been a military spouse? All the fun things.
Thank you. So I've been a military spouse for 16 years now, and we're currently stationed at Fort Bragg. And all the things that you mentioned spend my days teaching our kids and working in the Down syndrome community. And then last year released a book called Mission Ready Marriage, which is just this all-encompassing book that I feel like it was the book I needed a long time ago, and the book I still need. So when I reread it, I'm like, oh yeah, I need to keep remembering these lessons.
I love that. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So one of my questions to get to know you a little bit better, what did you think military life would be like before you got married, and what surprised you most when you started living at it?
I had no idea what I was in for. So I did not have a background in the military with my family. So I knew we'd be moving. I knew there would likely be deployments, and that was it. And the thing that surprised me most was the trauma piece. So the longer we've been in, pretty much all of my friends have walked through trauma with their husbands, or if their wife is in the service in some way or another, whether it's in the daily operations or it's a training exercise that didn't go well, or a TBI from a deployment. So that was the biggest surprise for me, was that I really needed to be equipped to know how to handle trauma, and I wasn't.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely something that isn't talked enough about. Like we hear about PTSD or something from a deployment, but we don't hear about the everyday trauma of, just the workload that they're experiencing, training exercises, things, all that kind of comes into play. But even like the trauma that us family members are experiencing, having our loved one ripped away every so often, having to go from, a 2 adult household support system to going into one, and how depression is so rampant within the military spouse community. So that's something that I've been looking into more often, is like, how can I deal with my trauma? How do I deal? What's really interesting, I'm going to kind of go back a little bit. A lot of our families come from trauma prior to service. Like a lot of
Yes,
families,
100%.
service members are joining the military to escape trauma that they're already experiencing. The amount of military spouse friends that I have who have grown up in very bad circumstances is probably more than I have in my civilian counterparts. And so it's definitely one. I think it's a community we can come together and we can build and support us. I think that's one way for us to do that, fix that trauma, or at least be able to experience that trauma and handle everyday life. But having tools is so much better. So I agree. So what actually inspired you to write Mission Ready Marriage? Was there a specific moment that sparked it?
So I had written previously a book called Stop Being a Blank Wife, and you fill that in: stop being a resentful wife, stop being a boring wife, whatever that is for you. And after 10 years of living in the military, I essentially just got sick of myself and was like, I am so resentful of all of these moves. Coming here to Bragg has been our 12th move, and I just wasn't enjoying who I was anymore. And our pastor had given this sermon, and he essentially had said, he was speaking to the entire congregation, and he said, the problem in your marriage is not your spouse. The problem in your marriage is you. And so I really took that and clung on to it and thought, how can I model Jesus in our marriage? Because I feel like that's the change point as we've developed in our marriage and in our faith. And what would that look like in my marriage? And so I did this 40-day challenge with my husband, and it completely transformed our marriage. We still say it was the best 40 days of our lives. And so I wrote a book that just very basic, quick book women can pick up and look at in 1 minute each day. What's the challenge? And go get it accomplished. And another military spouse had seen that book, and she said, you clearly have a heart for marriage, and I think we need a marriage book in our community that's really going to equip us from A to Z. What does that look like with finances? How do we do military marriage with trauma? How do we do it with deployments? How do we do it with solo parenting? Just the entire guide. And so that was really the catalyst to start writing the book, Mission Ready Marriage.
I love that. So obviously, like, and I think that's so interesting, because every person we talk to about who's writing a book, who's written a resource, who's started a nonprofit, who's done anything, there has always been that just moment that, I needed this, so I can't find this, or I'm not finding exactly what I need, so I'm going to make it for other spouses, which just speaks volumes of the military spouse community. Like, we know we're struggling. We know it. We get it, but we want to make sure that, maybe we can help another person not struggle as much as we had. I mean, 16 years as a spouse, moving 12 times, as a military spouse who's also moved quite a lot and grew up military, moving a lot, like that just is an added stress. So having that book, so I think I'm going to skip this next section. Well, actually, no. So what does it mean to be mission ready? So let's talk about the title. Like, what does it mean to be mission ready in marriage?
That's a great question. So for me, that starts with knowing the purpose. Like, what is the mission? What's the goal? And I went into marriage thinking just marriage, not even military marriage, just thinking it was about my happiness. That was kind of the motto I'd heard. Like, we just want you to be happy. Marry who will make you happy. But as somebody whose faith is priority, that's not our goal in marriage. That is a blessing that we get from marriage. But the book lays out our goals of marriage and how God designed this. And so really, I think figuring that out first, like knowing your purpose, why are you married? That helps you develop your mission. And so as a military spouse, I really believe our mission, and as, again, somebody who follows Christ, is to support our husbands, but recognize the fact that we are on mission too. So if your husband is sent to Fort Benning, then God is also sending you to Fort Benning to do mission-minded work there. And the book goes into what does that look like. But I really believe that is it, to understand your purpose for a marriage and then realize that you too have a purpose in the community. It's not just your husband.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such an important like aspect, like, knowing the why is so important. It will help you get through those really tough times. And so when we were preparing for the podcast, one of the questions I had was, your husband's deployment to Afghanistan and his return home with PTSD deeply shaped your marriage. Now, was this prior to when you guys did the course together, or was this something that happened later? And what did that season teach you about love and endurance?
That's a great question. So, 1 year into our marriage, just before our first year wedding anniversary, as it goes in military, right? We didn't get to celebrate together. He deploys, goes to Afghanistan, and it happens to be the night of power, 2 months into his deployment, which on the night of power, extremists believe that if they kill the enemy, they will be rewarded by Allah 1,000-fold. And I did not know that. Of course, my husband, with their mission, they knew what night it was. They knew to expect attacks. And he was just lifting off his base. He's an Apache helicopter pilot. And there were enemy cutting into the wire. And as they were just landing from a mission, they saw what was happening, lifted back up, but they weren't able to get high enough to safety, but they needed to be low enough to protect the base. And so they ended up taking 15 rounds to their helicopter. Multiple rounds went through their aircraft, essentially got shot down. And so the trauma of that event came home. And that was something, you get at least back then, this was 15 years ago, you get very little about reintegration and PTSD and TBI. And so I really pray this book helps equip women going forward. And I pray that doesn't happen to your spouse, but the military is a dangerous job and it's dangerous work and we have to be prepared. And so what I really learned from that was the importance of speaking with people when you need help, essentially, like calling in your chaplain, calling in your pastor, seeing a counselor. We've seen counselors separately. We've seen counselors together to do marriage therapy. And then working through one, you have to understand trauma. It physically changes your brain. And so whether your husband or your wife is in the service, or if you have trauma yourself, right? I do myself. I have a history of that. It's not your fault, and it's something you have to get help working through. And then also the really imperative piece of forgiveness. So you guys have to be able to forgive each other when you don't handle your trauma properly.
Yeah, and I think a lot of spouses hold that resentment, hold that not quite understanding of what they're going through. In reintegration can look so different. Like, us spouses, especially our new baby spouses, new to the military, their picture of homecoming is what we see in movies.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm so excited to see you, all the signs, all things, but sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's, I don't want to leave the house. I need weeks to decompress, not sleeping well. All the things come into play. If you are ever struggling with a reintegration process, reach out to a seasoned spouse. When I mean seasoned, at least someone who's gone through one deployment. As a spouse who's has been deployed multiple times, whether it's a planned 1 year, 2 year, or 1 year longer rapid deployments, things like that, it's never the same ever. Every reintegration has been different.
Yes.
And every process has been different depending on how quick he's bounced back, how long it takes. Those deployments definitely back in the early 2005, 2009 time frame, and before that, obviously. But I don't think we have as many service members who are still prior to that. They were rough. They were constantly attacked. They were constantly having to be on high alert. We all know, if we're on high alert, our body is physically draining all the time. So coming home from being on 100% alert to not having to be on alert is shocking to your system. So having that grace, having that forgiveness is so important. I think we've talked about that several times here on the podcast. And having that resentment, one, isn't going to help anything. It's not going to help you. You're going to create problems for yourself. You're going to start thinking, oh, it's my fault. It's not. I promise you all that it has nothing to do with you. It just, everyone processes that trauma differently. So, yes. And so the other question, and kind of going on with like resentment. So like, when you're living with resentment, you're learning to model Jesus in your marriage. What did that transform your look like for you personally? So when you kind of like took that and kind of was like, I need to model Jesus in my marriage, how did that look like to you at the beginning?
Yeah. So the things, when I look at the scriptures, when I look at modeling Jesus, I see two standout points: that he had extraordinary love for people, sacrificial love, and service. And he always, he says, I came to serve, not to be served. And so even when I didn't feel like it for those 40 days where I was like, I really want to model Jesus in my marriage and see, like, does this really work? Like, if we really love our spouse like we're supposed to, what does it do to our marriage? And honestly, it was just fun. That's what we found. Like, loving like Christ, this extraordinary, selfless love, even if you don't feel like it, it is so fun because you see the fruit of it. You see how it encourages your spouse, how it blesses your spouse, just surprising him with little gifts, or, going on dates that go out of the box. There's science that shows that you will bond closer if you do something out of the box that's not ordinary. And just these little things that are not hard to do. Honestly, it was just fun. And we enjoyed each other so much in a fresh way that at the end of it, my husband said, I don't want this to end, so now I'm going to reciprocate and do it for you for 40 days. And so it really was contagious, and it truly blessed us and showed us that God's word is true. That, so often we just struggle with our selfishness, and well, he doesn't deserve that, so I'm not going to do that. But if we just do it, it feels good and right.
Yeah, I think that's something a lot of military families struggle. Like, he got to go, like, he was away for so long, like, and I've been stuck at home with the kids and being solo parents and things like that. Like, I deserve to do this over him. And when you really think about it and come together, everyone's deserving. But when you do it together, it makes that transition or any time better. I loved how you guys did the 40-day challenge. It's so sweet. Okay, so what makes Mission Ready Marriage different from other books for military spouses? So what made this a slightly different from the other ones that you can get out there?
Like you said, I think they all come from a need. So I purchased every military spouse book on the market while I was doing the research process and writing, and they each have a fantastic place, and there's a need for all of them. They're all highlighted. I have pages tagged. I list them, almost all of them, in my book. There was a resource section after each chapter, so you can go and find all these other military spouse books that will help you. But essentially, as I was alluding to earlier, one, it's faith-based. So that was something, as I read a lot of these books, it was missing that piece, which to me is the transformation that happens in your marriage when you're following the scriptures. So there could be great advice in a lot of these books, and I still recommend you read them. But the transformation that you're seeking in yourself and in your marriage isn't going to happen unless you're following God's word, is how I believe. But essentially, too, I didn't find that there was great niche books, but there wasn't a book that you could hand a new spouse, or at the same time, you could hand a spouse who'd been in for 20 years, because I've had spouses read this who have been in this long and said, this still spoke to me, and this made me cry because I finally felt seen and heard, and just that full preparation.
Yeah, and I think that's like an important part where military spouses go unnoticed all the time. They go unnoticed for holding down the fort, going unnoticed for the work they've put in, whether they're a stay-at-home mom, homeschool mom, work full-time. I think a lot of spouses struggle with feeling unseen. And so having something that makes them feel so seen can be so uplifting. The amount of times where I've experienced that, either as a military kid or a military spouse, like kind of just like renews my spark of joy and being a part of the military community. That's all I've ever known, though. So like I always kind of like joke, like when we go live like the civilian life on these special duty assignments, I'm like, oh, I miss the military community so much, even though like while I'm in it, I'm like, oh, when is this going to end? So I have a very internal battle when it comes to being a military spouse because it's all I've known, and I love the community. This community is so uplifting for the most part. Like, obviously, we're always going to have bad apples, but if you find that right group, which, I know a lot of our military families do turn to going to church and Bible study groups and things like that to find that connection, to feel seen and heard as well. So you, at the end of every chapter in your book, you have a section called Modeling Jesus. We kind of touched on this, but why was it important to include that?
I think it goes back to the idea that our military marriages are hurting far more than the civilian community. If you look at all the statistics, as I was writing the book, statistically, we have the highest divorce rate of any profession on the planet. We have more debt and financial insecurity than any profession on the planet. And finances are the most common denominator for divorce. So there's just all of these statistics. 1 in 4 military families doesn't have enough money to put food on the table. So all of these things cause strain in your relationship, throw in the moving, all of that. So we can get educated, we can learn how to support these things. But honestly, if we're not, I wasn't a Christian growing up. I didn't have a relationship with Christ. So I know what it is to live without him. And I know now what it is to live with him as my Savior. And the change point in marriage happens when we're following Christ. When God created us, he created marriage. And when we live marriage the way that he designed it, that's where the change happens. And so that's why I think it's essential to equip ourselves, which I do through each chapter, but then to look at this Modeling Jesus section and see how can you actually live like Christ, because that's where you're going to see the true difference in your marriage.
Yeah, I think that's just like it's beautifully said. I think, having that, practice and going in and finding that is so important, whether that is, going to church, Bible study groups, connecting with those who are like-minded is so important. So can you share one of your favorite stories or lessons from the book that you hope will really connect with readers? Like what's something that stands out that you hope people get from your book?
One, I think I'm going to talk about purpose for a minute, because as we've moved around, I've led Bible studies in our home, most places that we've traveled, and like you said, connected in church, because I really feel, you alluded to earlier, like the depression and the loneliness, the anxiety in our community, that can really be alleviated by finding a body of believers, of friends, even if you're not a believer, but you just want to have a body of friends.
That community is so important. It's so important.
And say, just start seeking, what is this? I don't know if I'm into this or not, but I just want to explore it. It is a group of people who will stand by you, who will bring you the meals, who will show up at your door, who will pray for you, all the things that we need in this community. When we leave our family, we have to go cultivate a new family if we're going to be healthy, emotionally, spiritually, physically. But one of the things I think we struggle with, and I really struggled with, is finding my purpose in each place. So as I said, we've moved 12 times, and there would be times where I felt like, wow, I really found my purpose here. This is it. Like, I'm working at this faith-based pregnancy resource center. These women are so in need. We're saving babies. This is amazing. Like, I was so energized, invigorated. And then we had to move across the country. And I was like, okay, I'm losing my purpose. And I thought, okay, that's okay. I'll go work at the Pregnancy Resource Center in New York. Well, every single door closed and I couldn't do it. And I was like, okay, that's it. I don't have a purpose. And then that feeds the resentment and the bitterness when you don't feel like you are on mission and that you are called here for a reason. And so I pray in the book that you will see that you have a purpose, that God has created us all within the same purpose to go and teach and make disciples. And whether that is in your home as a homeschool mom, whether that is out in the workforce, whether that's leading a podcast, whatever that is, we all have the same purpose. We all have the same mission. And so I pray that the book really enlivens military spouses and helps them go boldly as they move, knowing that your purpose the boundaries around it may change, but it remains the same everywhere you go. It's going to look a little different how you do it, but you have purpose everywhere you go.
I love that. So that is something that I also struggled with for a really, really long time. I was working, I was doing, just jobs that I could find. I didn't have that sense of fulfillment, sense of purpose. I had, had my kids and I loved being a mom, but I still felt like I wasn't giving myself to what I wanted to do. And that is actually how I fell into Deployed Love. So Deployed Love is the nonprofit that is over the podcast. And we are an advocacy group for military families. Like, I knew that my heart and soul belongs to the military community. I've grown up in it. I've seen all sides except for being an active duty service member. So being a kid, being a spouse, watching my husband and my dad and stepdad all, serve in the military. And I knew that I wanted to support military families. I knew that that would give me that fulfillment that I was looking for, because I knew the struggles. I knew that there were things that people just weren't getting the resources for. And so, if Sabrina was on here, she'd be like, yeah, she emailed me a bunch of times. Like, I was just like, how can I get involved? Oh, well, we're not doing much right now because of COVID. I was like, I don't care. Like, what do you need me to help? I will stuff envelopes. Like, how can I help in this organization? And 5 years later, I am the executive director. And it shows just how powerful purpose can be, and shows that, when you put your mind to something and you go out and you put yourself out there, you can make a change. You can make a change for yourself. You can make a change for your family. You can make a change for the community you're part of, whether that is faith-based or not, whatever it is. That is so important. And I think that gives, those family members who don't, especially our spouses who don't work. Like, I am a huge advocate. Volunteer, volunteer, volunteer. It will give you something to do and make you, if you're struggling, feeling like I'm not providing for my family or I'm not doing something for myself, there are so many volunteer opportunities out there. Like, I mean, hundreds at every installation that can help you fulfill that purpose. And so I think that's a beautiful lesson to take away from that book. So let's see, what are some practical tools or habits couples can use to strengthen their marriage and military life?
One thing is very easy, and a lot of people already know, but maybe not if you're not in the faith community, but anybody can use it, and that is the 5 love languages.
I love the 5 love languages.
Yes, and they even have a military edition, but I think it's really important to know that's a tool that will help you discover, how does your spouse want to feel loved? Because we often want to love our spouse the way we want to feel loved. Like, my love language is quality time. So I think if we're sitting on the couch and we're eye to eye and, there's no technology going on, that's how I'm making my spouse feel the most loved, but that's not his love language. So I feel like understanding that is really important. Also, Financial Peace University, it used to be free for active duty military spouses. I think now it's highly discounted, but that was the best resource that we have ever done in our marriage, that we both agree has set us up financially to be secure, to save, to be prepared for each one of our moves, to be able to bless other military spouses when they're in need, to tithe to our church and invest there. So Financial Peace University is also a really essential tool. And then I think also taking 30 minutes or an hour and figuring out what resources are available, what's on your local installation that can help you. That, there's things from food pantries to free gowns for balls to like the events that, you've talked about, connection events that you have with Deployed Love. And also I have a free download on my website that has over.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say, I was like, Ashley has a free download on our website. And I know we've been talking about this for months, y'all, but we do have our resource guide coming out. We finally have the staff who've been helping us get that to go. That has been our dream for years now. So we do have that coming, and hopefully we'll eventually have that installation based for where we're located. But yeah, resource guides are so amazing, and connecting with all of those other organizations as well. Even if it's just in your back pocket, like friends, like if you're like, hey, I don't need this right now, but if you have it in your back pocket, one, if you have a friend who needs it, you're like, hey, check this out. 2, when you do need it, because eventually every military spouse is going to need these resources, go for it. And I'm a huge advocate for those marriage retreats, even if you're not faith-based, y'all.
Those are amazing.
Go to them. I've been to several. I even went, my very best friend's dad is a chaplain in the military, or he's retired now. We even drove 3 states away to go to one that he was putting on, because we were like, we need to go, and just because every chaplain and every pastor's, everyone's different in how they approach it. But those love languages is so interesting just to see, right, how I find it. I will say that we look at that often, because I feel like my love language has changed as I've grown. Like, it wasn't the same when I was 19. So my husband's is definitely not the same. His has adjusted, and you can have more than one. Like, it's not just one, but having that idea of what that is and having those conversations with your spouse is so important. Even if like your spouse is like, I don't want to go to the retreat, they hold them all the time for just the spouses, like when they're on deployment and stuff. And usually they're at fun locations where your kids can go to childcare, and then you get to do all the fun things. So I highly, highly recommend that you get into those if you can. If anything, it's a nice little escape for your family where you pick up some knowledge that you may have not gotten beforehand. So I'm a huge advocate for those. I'm always like, go, go, go. I wish they did more of them. I definitely feel like this tapered off a little bit, but it's, funding and stuff like that all comes into play. But if you happen to get a chance to go, definitely sign up, friends. I know when you were saying that, I was like, oh yeah, like this is like definitely something. I think I've been to 3 in our 15 years as a military spouse. And most of them, well, like one, like I said, one was because my best friend's dad was putting it on, but the other 2 were during deployment for spouses. So like, not only was it about like how you can reconnect and learn and, the 7 love languages, but there was a lot of resources, financial talk, how to, build a stronger relationship. And it wasn't all just faith-based. So I do know that some families are like, well, I can't go to that because I don't go to church. And that's not the case. Like, military chaplains are there to support you no matter what. So don't discount them as a resource, because they are amazing resources. I have loved every single chaplain that we have had through our military community, and they've been just great at sharing resources and things like that. So definitely connect with them. So we did talk a little bit about this, and I think most as military families, we know this like in our soul because we live it. But what are some of the challenges military families face that civilians don't often know about? I think one of the things is our civilian counterparts think that military money makes some good money, and that's not the case. We have so many. I mean, I think right now, like when y'all are listening to this, hopefully the government shutdown is gone.
You're right.
But who knows? But right now, so many military families were really extremely stressed about not getting paid. And, there's been so many comments about like, you should have savings and you should have, 2 months worth of savings, da da da. And the reality is that most of our military families live paycheck to paycheck.
That's right.
A huge portion are on food stamps and WIC. So, a lot of our families don't have that. And I think that a lot of our civilian counterparts do think that because in the military, because we get housing allowance, let me tell y'all, that BAH don't cover much, y'all, especially when you're in locations where the housing is, this is like I think that's one of my biggest pet peeves about the military community. Not the military community, but about, the benefit of being in a military family is that BAH. And like, I'll just, for instance, like when I was living in Virginia, y'all, we were stationed at Virginia Tech, which is in Blacksburg, Virginia. Our BAH was based off of Roanoke, which was an hour away, first off. And the cost of living was a lot less there. So, the cost of living there was around anywhere between $1,700 to $2,100 for, a three-bedroom home, depending on the location. Blacksburg is more like $2,500. It's a very big difference. And you have families who are, paying out of that, the BAH may cover the cost of rent and mortgage, but it's not covering the cost of utilities and things. So you do have families who are living outside of their means. And I'm doing air quotes for those who are listening, because yes, it's outside of their means, but they have no other choice. They can either choose to live in a very not good area and put their families at risk, or they can live outside of their means and have to make cuts in other places. But a lot of times that means that, that could be that they have to really budget on food and all these other things come into play. So I think that's definitely something our civilian counterparts don't do. Is there something else that you think that they don't often know about?
I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's a really important one for them to know how to be able to support us and to understand. Like you said, you've talked about this, I believe, in just a podcast you recently released, maybe it was your last one, about moving, right? That like often we are spending thousands of dollars on that
So
we
much
don't get
money.
reimbursed from moving, and each house is different, so requires different needs. And then, for example, we have
like new curtains and all the things that you guys don't think about. And yes, you don't have to put curtains up in your home.
Right.
I mean, there are things that's, I guess, a need, a want, not a need.
Right.
But yeah, that is so expensive. I mean, we just moved here and we did purchase this home, so we did put more money into the home to get it to where we wanted it to be. But like, government shut down. Like, we haven't got reimbursed for our move. We don't know when that will happen. And thankfully we had savings, but not everyone has that.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of things like, we have families who are moving who don't, they're having to put deposits. Some places are requiring multiple deposits. You have pet deposits if you have, animals. And a lot of people, I've seen people like, well, don't have animals. I'm like, but why shouldn't a military family not be able to have a family pet just because the military decides to move them every 2 to 3 years? Yes, they have to pay that, and yes, yeah, you should be preparing for that. Like I have a rule with them, like every 2 years, even if I know that orders are not coming up, start putting money to the side to cover those expenses, because I know they'll come up. It could come up where I have a year notice. It could come up like our notices are always very short. We have like 3 to 6 months notice that we're leaving. So, that's not a lot of time to put money aside if you're not making that much money. So having those, like, just those thought process, okay, like, we know we're moving every 2 years. We need to be putting that money to the side. We're not touching it. If we don't use it, great. We can use that for whatever the case may be. But I definitely think that our counterparts just definitely don't fully understand the whole scope. They don't understand the trauma, like we talked earlier, of the family members, and not just our service members, but our family members can have, what it puts the strain on our kids. Like, everyone's like, oh, your kids are doing so well. I'm like, yeah, they're doing good. Because they have no choice. Like, they have no choice. They have no choice. My husband left last week. He's been gone for about a week now for a year-long overseas tour. For those who already listened, my daughter has been just not handling it very well. And I try to have grace with her, because I know that, one, Dad's been home a lot the last 2 years. He was on a special duty assignment. He wasn't going into long trainings. He was home every night. He was home almost every single weekend. And then now, from going from just being home all the time to being gone, he's even struggling with it. He's like, I'm so lonely. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that you're having to do that. But that's just like the things, like, there's all these different things, like geobashing tours, like, families are separated for very long periods of time, not just because of deployment. And so I had actually an extended family member going, like, he's gone just because. I'm like, yeah, he's just over in Poland. I say living his best life, but he's like, it's so gloomy and everything here. I'm like, you've been there a week, honey. Give it a little bit longer. And we talk about that. Like, military wives are often among the loneliest groups out there. And we talked a little bit about this earlier too, about how finding that community is so important. And we preach that here on the podcast. Like, if you've listened to at least any one of our number of episodes, you'll have hear this at least one time in each episode. It's so important. Community, having a community, even if it's just one person, friends, it will make a world of a difference. Yeah, and you just have to get out.
I fully agree with you. And one thing I've learned as we've moved place to place, and I'm an introvert naturally, so it requires effort, but I know that I need it. And if you can't find the community that you're looking for, then you have to cultivate it. Then you have the opportunity to create it. It can be as simple as invite your neighborhood, like your little neighborhood kids and their moms over for like an ice cream party, or create a book club, or maybe you're really into candle
Yep.
making, invite some people over to make some candles. Just, it doesn't have to be extravagant, but just
No,
create the
it could be as
community.
simple as like, hey, who wants to meet at the park, let the kids play
That's
and have
right.
just adult interaction. You know, we see it all the time. If you go on any military spouse Facebook group, you will see, I need to make friends, but I'm
Yes.
scared to go out and make friends, or I don't know where to look, or all that kind of stuff. My first suggestion is to look at the resources that are already in place. Check out your installation. Is there Deployed Love? Is there a Blue Star family group? Is there the USO putting on family organizations? Or if there's already an established group, book club, anything like that. For instance, like I moved here to Benny, and there's a book club here that's established, but it's not very kid friendly. So as a spouse, as my spouse is gone, either A, I can pay to have a babysitter, which ideally I really don't
More
want to do,
money. Yeah.
the more money, or I can start a book club. And I've started a book club at every location I've been at, because that's instantly like, those are my go-to people. I can tell behind me. I'm a
Yes,
big
I love it.
reader.
Can I move in?
So I, you know, wasn't going to start one here. And then I was like, no, even if like it's just three people, and like if I find three individuals who like to read, that we can get together once a month at least, like I would be so happy. But like we have Deployed Love. Deployed Love at every location is slightly different, because our coordinators are the ones that are putting on the programs. And so depending on what they feel the need is, the one here at Benny does a play group meetup every single week. We're gonna add more things in. We're always looking for volunteers. So if you are looking, I'm gonna put a little plug out there, everybody. If you are looking to get out and make connection in a community, but you want to do it with some type of backing, come talk to us. We are always looking for individuals who have that serving heart and who want to give back to the community, but also get something in return. That's a great way to make a community, is volunteer, start a book club, meet up at the park. But there are resources out there, and I highly encourage all of our listeners to take a look at it and see if something fits. And even if anything, if it's through an organization, you're learning more about them that you can share with friends. So it's so important. Let's see. I have so many questions. Sabrina gave us a lot. Let's see. So we talked about challenges. We talked about Lily. So what is a piece of advice that you would give to couples struggling under the pressures of deployments, moves, or long separations? Like, what's one thing that you would give to them?
That's a great question. I think what we had talked about earlier, kind of maybe the theme of this is like resources, and you had mentioned the chaplains. I would say reach out to the chaplain. If you are really struggling through a deployment, you need some guidance. And again, like you said, you don't have to be a believer to work with the chaplain. They're able to give advice no matter what the status of your beliefs are. And I think for us, that has been really imperative to realize, like, okay, we're struggling and we can't figure this out ourselves. We've read the books, we've prayed, we're going to church, we're doing all the things, but it's not making the difference. And so just make the bold, brave step of reaching out to your unit chaplain or your pastor at church or a mentor at church, and being vulnerable and saying, hey, here are the areas that we are struggling, and then they can provide you with wisdom and resources and help you learn to talk to each other in a healthy manner to figure out how you can reconnect.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, we preach this on the podcast, like resources are so important. We're huge advocates of networking. And like I said, even if you're not in the need for it, if you come across, save it somehow, pin it to a folder in your desktop, put it, write it down, download Ashley's resource guide or any other resource guide that's out there. That having that at your fingertips just gives you a peace of mind, like knowing that, hey, I don't have a deployment coming in, but our today time, we've had so many rapid deployments in the last 5 years. Right. You never know when something's going to happen, and having those resources just tucked away can just give you that peace of mind. And so having all of that come in, and, having the community aspect to it, it's so important. And like I said, if you're in the middle of a deployment, I'm also a huge advocate for spouses, whether you want to be involved with it or not, connecting with your SFRG or whatever it is in the counterparts, key spouses, or whatever it is for other branches. I mean, I hear it all the time. So many spouses saying, I don't want to be like associated with my husband's job or have any connection with them. I get it. Don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, if something does happen, again, you have it tucked in your back pocket. You don't have to go to events, but you want to make sure that you at least have correct contact information given to them, and also have their information so that way, if something does arise, can get into bank account, something crazy happens at home and you have to get a message downrange, your quickest way is to go through that person. So having all those little dots connected creates the picture and helps you navigate through military life. So I think that's just all of them play a role. Okay, so let's talk about faith through unexpected trials. So you have had some unexpected trials through your guys' journey as well. Let's talk about, so you finished this book, writing the book, and went through the editing process when your baby was in the NICU.
Yes.
And you were living outside of a Ronald McDonald House, which is a great resource. We've talked about that on the podcast as well.
Yes.
How did that experience strengthen your faith and perspective as well?
That, yes, like you said, was very unexpected. So when I was 12 weeks pregnant, we found out that our daughter had Down syndrome, and we were just thought we were finding out our gender so we could do a gender reveal party, and found out that news instead. So very unexpected, but the military had prepared us, as we talked about trauma before. And I pray one day that is not a traumatic experience when a woman gets a diagnosis, but unfortunately in our current era, it is traumatic because we're just lacking resources, and there's just ignorance around what Down syndrome is. And so for me, not for my husband, that was a traumatic experience. But I felt like because we had already been living an unexpected lifestyle for 16 years, we knew to call on community right away. We knew, okay, we are in a place where we need help. We need support. We are going to jump into this Down syndrome community right away. We're going to, connect with our North Carolina Down Syndrome Alliance, and we're going to read the books, and we are going to join the play groups. Like if you've been talking about play groups and how that's a simple way to get involved. And so the military had really prepared us to know what to do in the face of the unexpected. And because if there's anything about the military, maybe that's the word, unexpected. And so we were really prepared, but it absolutely strengthened our faith. You had asked about that because it's never something that I envisioned for my life. I never thought I would be a parent to a child with Down syndrome, and how that would ultimately open our eyes to the beauty of all people, regardless of abilities or differences. And it has just shown us the face of God in beautiful ways that we wouldn't have if we didn't have Finley.
Yeah. And again, I think this is also just a testament that like we're not alone. There's so many families who go through, similar or somewhat similar circumstances of getting bad news, child diagnosis, a spouse diagnosis of something. That we're a community and we come together. And I think that's what's so beautiful about the military community, is that we can rally and be there for other individuals. And again, I think this just speaks like volumes of our community. There's something on here that Sabrina had, and I don't know if you touched on this, so let me know if this is just a typo. But this says how you often call military life a mission field.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
So I really feel like we are stationed where we are stationed on purpose, for a purpose. And so that mission field, kind of like how we were talking about purpose earlier, is is the same wherever we go. And so I think that can release a lot of pressure, that whether
Mm-hmm.
you're at Benning or Bragg, or, you know, your husband's on a boat somewhere and you're alone on the coast, and regardless of whatever service you're in, and military or not, but that we have a mission field where we go, and as followers of Christ, that is to preach the gospel, to share the good news with people, and to help them to follow all of God's commands. And we can do that
Yeah.
in a multitude of different ways wherever we are.
Yeah, I really love that. It took me a really long time to learn that we're supposed to be. There were times where I'm just like we keep getting these special duty assignments that are doing nothing for my husband's career. But looking back at it, I'm like, okay, he is so well rounded. Like, he has done every aspect of the military general career. Like, you know, he's taught, he has led, he has done all the different things. And I'm like, okay, like, maybe this is what he was supposed to do. Maybe he was supposed to do these things. And so, and even with this year-long, like, unaccompanied tour, I'm like, okay, like, it really sucks, everyone, don't get me wrong, but
Yes.
I'm also kind of like, this is also 100% a great opportunity for him. Like, as much as I hate that he is halfway across the world, living on his own, not being able to be here with the kids and stuff like that, this is still also a really great opportunity for him. He gets to experience Europe, which I grew up in Europe. I spent all of middle school and parts of high school stationed overseas, and
Wow.
it's some of my best, you know, memories of growing up as a military kid. That, you know, as much as I want my kids to experience that too, I'm glad that he's at least getting to experience living overseas and outside of like that normal typical military career. So having that mindset is really, I think, is really important as well. Okay, so let's see, what advice would you give to a new military spouse just beginning this journey?
So my first piece of advice, and again, I can, you know, there's a theme here and it all seems to circle back, but
Yeah.
would really be to connect with a seasoned military spouse,
Mhm.
you know, let's say 5 years or more, who,
Mhm.
and again, for me personally, because Christ is the most important part of my life, and I believe that's the change point in our marriages. So ask a seasoned military spouse who follows Christ to mentor you, and have that contact in your phone where you can, you know, it's 11 o'clock at night and
Yep.
your husband's not coming home because there's government shutdown and now he's trapped in Yuma, Arizona, and he can't get a flight back, right? Whatever that was our circumstance a couple weeks ago. Whatever the circumstance is, or my child is having a meltdown and I don't know what to do because they miss their dad, and how do you handle this? And the book goes through all that too. How do we support our kids? How do we tell our kids, like, hey, you have a mission field too. Like, you
Yes,
are
I
here
love
in
that.
this specific place and time in history for a reason, for the people that God has put around you. But going back to that first military spouse, and then honestly, not like, I hate this part of writing a book, the marketing part, but really, like, pick up a copy of Mission Ready Marriage. Like, it is going to give you your A to Z of here's how you walk through each one of these situations that you will walk through. And if you don't walk through it, somebody in your unit's going to walk through it. And here's
Yep.
how you support them when this, you know, when your unit finds out that one of the members passed away in a training mission, when you find out you have to move in 2 weeks unexpectedly, and, you know, here's what you do when you can't get a job. Here's what you do when you feel lonely. I think it's really important that we equip ourselves and get in community.
Yeah, beautifully said. I agree 100%. I think that is it's all full circle. Like you just said, like everything, you know, each thing adds up and it comes full circle and it helps you navigate this crazy lifestyle. If anyone says it's not crazy, then kudos to them. But it can be crazy. I mean, there's obviously times where it's nice and, you know, nothing happens, but, you know, that's just something about the military lifestyle. It's like something can happen and everything changes.
Right.
And you did mention something about like how to equip kids as well. And I think that's so important. As a military kid growing up, I was really kind of blessed that my parents didn't shelter us. Like, I do feel they sheltered us a little bit looking back, but I do think it was a very different type of culture when I was growing up in the military that it is now. First off, we have social media. That's made a huge difference for our spouses to connect. I mean, I was so excited. I hadn't met any of our coordinators here at Benny face to face, just through Zoom calls and stuff like that. So getting to like finally get to meet them in person, I was just like, oh, we're best friends already. Like, I love you guys so much. And just connecting with people. One of my favorite like groups is the Bookish Mill Spouse page. We're all there just to talk about books and our love of books, and we're all military spouses. So like, we're like, what's everyone reading on this night all alone with our service members gone? And we can just all connect on that. And I think that's just wonderful to have that opportunity. But being able to equip our kids is so important. And as we're preparing our kids for this upcoming move, they're older. My kids are 7 and almost 11, where last time Dad was gone a really long time, they were like 2 and 5 and really weren't understanding the concept of time. So yeah, they're like, where's Dad? But then I guess as soon as you said it, it was like, oh, it's out of their head. This time they're just like, really miss Dad. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. And so like each stage for our kids is different too. Like, as they're growing older, attitudes are different. Like I said, my youngest, I'm just like, who are you? Who are you right now? But, supporting and building everybody in your family unit, goodness, Ashley, is so important. Like, so preparing yourself, building yourself up, finding your mission, then your kids, and then also having your spouse connect and all that kind of stuff too. It's just so important. And I community and resources are so important, guys. I will die on that hill, and I say it with my whole chest, you guys. If you do nothing else in the military community, at least have those resources in your back pocket for a rainy day, and find at least one person to be your community. I know that it's hard. We have so many different types of personalities in the military community. We have those extroverts, we have those introverts. There's the new term out that I don't know what the new term is, but it's like a combination of the two. Yeah, or something like that. I feel like that's what I am now, because I used to be an extrovert, but as I've gotten older, I'm like, oh, I'm okay being at home, but like at the same time, I can go out. So let's see, let's do two more questions, actually. One more question. So you kind of touched base on this, but what do you hope most readers and listeners will take away from Mission Ready Marriage?
I hope they will take away hope. I feel like that is really lacking in our community, that you can do this, that you can have a strong, beautiful marriage that knows how to forgive. It's not going to be perfect. That you are married to the right person. I think that's really hard. That's something we've struggled with in this community. Like, well, if I would have married somebody, if we're being honest, if I would have married somebody else, I wouldn't be here. This would be
I'd have a career. I wouldn't be moving all the time. I hear that all the time. Mm-hmm.
But Acts 17:26 says God determined your boundaries. And so you are with your specific husband on purpose, and you both have a mission, and it's beautiful and it's filled with hope. But it requires you to rely on the gospel and the scriptures, and to be connected with God, and that's where the fruit is going to come.
Well, I cannot wait to go get my copy of Mission Ready Marriage. So where can listeners connect with you, and where can they get the copy of your book?
So I'm on Instagram and Facebook at ashley.ashcraft.author. And you can also log onto my website, ashleyashcraft.com. We talk about book clubs. There's leader guides that you can download there. There's free resource guide with over 200 military resources. And then you can purchase the book anywhere that you buy books from. Amazon, Walmart, Target, anywhere you can get books.
Perfect. So it is readily available for all of you who are listening who want to grab a copy. Or I think this is a great book to also gift to a new military spouse, or maybe a spouse who is going through a hard time as well. I think those are also just having like that little resource in your pocket, especially to someone who is struggling. Or if you're a family member, I think this is something that you can read as well and kind of connect. And even if you are maybe not the service members, immediate family, mom, spouse, or mom, sister, we have a lot of families that listen to the podcast, just know that, you'll be able to find some knowledge in there to assist your family. And I think that is just, be mission ready. We talk about it, like being mission ready, being ready for the unexpected, expect the unexpected, like mentality. That's something we have to live by as a military community. And having those resources and having those tools will help you be prepared for whatever may come your way. And thank you so much, Ashley, for joining me today. I do apologize that Sabrina wasn't here, but I thoroughly enjoyed our chat today.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
We will have all of Ashley's information in the show notes, so make sure you go and check out her website, go snag that resource guide, and grab your copy of Mission Ready Merit. And like we like to say here at the podcast, Ruckup Buttercup.